This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
The second sponsor of the show is TravCon, the Travelers Conference. I'm super excited to announce them as a sponsor of the show. TravCon was there for me before I got started as a medical nomad, and now I'm actually involved with the planning of the event. So super aligned, super congruent. I've been promoting them before they were even a sponsor, and so I'm excited to have them on. So there are 3 main reasons that you should go to TravCon this year. Number 1, value. This is the cheapest conference to go to as a medical professional. And also the only place that I've ever felt like royalty when you're walking in and all these staffing agencies and all these recruiters want to talk to you and you're bumping elbows with these travelers and they're interested about your story, about where you're coming from and what you're doing. And it's overall just a really good feel-good event. Number 2 is education and growth. So this conference was founded on the realization that there's a lot to know to be a medical traveler, to be a medical nomad. And so this is where you go to get the most updated tax information. This is where you go for those really niche specific questions on what's it like to travel in an RV and what's it like to travel to Hawaii. And then 3rd, community. This is where a lot of my traveler friends that are very near and dear to my heart right now, this is where we met. So this is where the relationship sparked. It's also one of the only places that you get to go to and see the leaders and meet the leaders of the industry, both on the staffing agency side and on the traveler side, and also get to meet your recruiters face-to-face that you've been working with. So TravCon is always in September every year. TravCon is also always in Las Vegas. The link is going to be in the show notes for you to get your ticket. I'll be at TravCon. All my friends will be at TravCon. I hope to see you there. Hey Nomads, Dylan coming at you from San Diego. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dylan Callier, and today we are second episode into the negotiations series and talking about why really good clinicians suck at negotiations. And getting into this is probably going to be a shorter episode, but instead of just doing one big long episode on negotiations, I wanted to focus on one piece at a time about things that I think are really important. So these first few are going to be big picture sort of things and things that I kind of want to talk about of what's going on with the industry right now and us specifically as medical travelers, the kind of maybe barriers that we face and the challenges that we have, and also the role that we have in wanting to see this industry elevated and to be a better place to work as a traveling clinician. And so this is one of those bigger picture ones where why is it that healers is a good term that I like to use. Why is it that we as nurses, as therapists, as techs, as imaging, as sonographers, all of us, why do we struggle so much with negotiations? And I really look at it kind of with the odds already against us, because if you're coming into this as a newer traveler, and now there's a lot more information out there, but before you'd come in as a newer traveler, the only way you got information was through your recruiter. And so it's kind of like walking into those big once a year poker tournaments where everybody's on the TV and they show you the cards on the screen and they're wearing the sunglasses so they can't read their eyes, and it's like $1 million tables and stuff like that. It's like going into one of those rooms and sitting down at the table and expecting to walk away a winner. When you're a new traveler and you're coming in and you're dealing with a recruiter, if it comes down to hard negotiations, if that's the relationship you have with that recruiter, you're not going to win against the king poker player that's been showing up, every year. They've done this negotiation thing a lot. They might do it 5 times a day, 6 times a day, however many times a day. And this is your first time. If you have a relationship where you're both just like very aggressive and there's not this equal expectation of fairness going into it, you're going to lose. And so the odds are already stacked against us in this scenario. That's why I think that we need to have a relationship built on fairness, really support and reward the good recruiters, and really tell the bad recruiters that go against this, that kind of do those shady negotiation tactics, and tell them why we're not going to work with them. So the other thing that we specifically as healers really struggle with is, because to be a good clinician, you need to have strong empathy. In order to relate to your patients and for them to feel safe and for them to feel heard, you have to have strong empathy. You have to have the ability to sit down and listen to them and really feel where they're coming from as best you can, so that you can serve them better. So you know their fears, so you can squash those, so that you can educate them properly, so that you know when is the good time to, if you're a physical therapist like myself, when is a good time to make them do exercises, or when is a good time to say, you know what, like, we need to chill out for today. I know you're having a big kind of emotional ball of everything going on right now, and we just need to do some education and really get you calmed down because it's affecting your health. You have to know how to do that. And so when you have strong empathy, it does make you a little bit of a target when it comes to negotiations, because they can always pull the guilt trip card. And so the guilt trip card is, I'll use an example of kind of like, again, buying the car. I know that's a cliche thing to go to, but buying a car. And I was going to get rid of the lease that my parents had got and help me out through college. And I was going in to buy this vehicle newer. And so it was an actual lot. So it wasn't a used car salesman, but it was a new car salesman. And so going in, and I'd had several talks with this guy on the phone, and we show up, and I had all the information. I had the Kelly Blue Book. I wasn't going in a newbie, and sat down, and when I told him, like, no, this is what I think the fair price is, this is what I'm looking for, he tried to guilt trip me. And so I was like, oh man, like, I tried so hard for you because I knew we had this relationship. I knew that you were coming and driving all the way up. I tried so hard to get it down to as low as I could. And now you're saying that it's not good enough. And it's just, it's really hard. And so that type of guilt tripping, one, he said it's a relationship. Guilt tripping doesn't work in relationships. Two, because I was a clinician, I'm more empathetic. I'm like, no, I feel bad, right? Now I'm actually like falling for this. And I ended up not buying the car from him. I did end up going somewhere else, and they gladly took my offer. But the guilt tripping, like, that's not a fun part of it. And so if you are working with a recruiter, and all of a sudden they're like, man, like, I thought we had a good relationship going on. I worked so hard on this deal for you, and now you're going to turn it down. If you have any type of guilt tripping, that's a no-go. If you're talking with a recruiter and you're like, hey, by the way, I'm actually working with multiple companies, multiple recruiters. How do you feel about that? And they start going, oh man, I really like the loyalty between me being loyal to you and you being loyal to me. If you have even just the slightest guilt tripping on that initial conversation, if they're not enthusiastically saying, yes, you need to work with multiple companies because that's the only way that you're going to get the jobs that you want. If they don't understand that and instead guilt trip you, you can bet that they're going to guilt trip you later. And so that's good things to recognize early on of the recruiters that you want to work with. So the big thing for this episode, I know it's going to be a quick one. The reason good clinicians struggle with negotiations is because we are so empathetic. And so that is a really strong, and it's a really good trait to have in general as a human being. And as a clinician, you have to have it if you're going to be a solid clinician. But it is a little bit of a hindrance sometimes when it comes down to these negotiations. And so my way around that, if I am going into a really hardcore negotiation This is more for kind of like the car stuff and any type of not contracts that I'm going to be signing for a travel agency, but other things, maybe like the street haggling that I did for in Thailand and working with the tuk-tuk drivers. This is more for those scenarios, but I will listen to rap music because it gets me in a headspace of being a little bit more aggressive. And so if you want to do that, I was thinking, I'm not going to rap for you guys, but if that helps you out to be a little bit more aggressive and assertive when it comes to hardcore negotiations, then you can do that. But again, we want a relationship between you and the recruiter that's a dream team, that is built on fairness, that you guys are a good traveler, you're a good recruiter, you're a good match. You hustle hard finding the jobs, and then you as the traveler, you are being really quick with the documentation. You're showing up to work and you're showing up on time and you're being a stud and you're being a stellar clinician, and they won't ask you to come back, and they trust that agency now more because they want more good clinicians like yourself. That is what the relationship is built on. And so having strong empathy, you can be taken advantage of if you don't know that you don't have to work with recruiters that guilt trip you. But ultimately, that is why most clinicians starting out kind of suck at negotiations. But if you like this episode, you can find more episodes in the next negotiation series popping up once a week in Spotify and iTunes. If you want the early access to the episodes, you can go to YouTube and go ahead and subscribe there. And more comments, more likes, more reviews, more heart symbols, more world symbols. I love the world emoji. The more engagement that these things get, the more people can see it. Ultimately, the more people we can help. So thank you so much for the support, guys. I truly appreciate it. Thanks so much for being good clinicians and being healers and being empathetic. And that is truly one of the most impressive traits, I think, with people, is the ability to feel how others are feeling and notice when people are stressed and just be there for those. So that is a really strong trait to have. But all you nomads, continue to have strong empathy and continue to have safe travels.